Did you have a favorite book as a kid? Something that just stuck with you and got you so excited even just by the slightest look at the cover? Well, for me, and I'm willing to bet an entire generation, that series was the incredible, groundbreaking, and sheer awesome Eyewitness books. If you ever checked out one of these beautifully illustrated books from your library, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even if you somehow missed the books, you probably know the absolutely iconic theme song from the TV show. Most library books back then were either those same old picture books or just dense text. Boring, right? But Eyewitness, well, they were completely different. They combined intricate illustrations and diagrams that broke down all of the literal coolest topics possible to kids, like knights, dinosaurs, and planets. It's funny though, because even though you couldn't go 5 minutes without seeing one of these books in the 90s, I don't think I've heard anyone mention these lately, let alone even seen one for probably decades. And it got me thinking, well, why not? Well, it turns out the company behind them has had a real roller coaster ride of a journey filled with incredible highs and very low lows. So today, I wanted to explore the history of how this beautiful series came to be, what makes them so special, and where they're at now to explore whatever happened to Eyewitness. Hi everyone, my name is Otto and welcome to Exits Examined. We'll be exploring franchises, series, and more after their prime time has seemingly come to an end. If that sounds good to you, there's a like and subscribe button below. Now, if I take off my 90s blinders for just a moment, I have to acknowledge that there are probably people out there in the world who rather criminally might not even know what Eyewitness is. Aside from being just pure awesome, the Eyewitness books are simple to explain. They are a series of children educational nonfiction books, but they are also so much more than that. Packed with huge, vibrant pictures and fascinating facts, I cannot convey in words how incredibly cool these were as a kid. And you could tell one of these from a mile away with these huge, distinct illustrations always set against a clean white background. Sure, they packed in tons of awesome information, but the way they presented it was actually pretty revolutionary for kids' books, with a focus on informational and easily digestible imagery. It sounds kind of cliche to say, but well, they made learning feel fun, and I'm willing to bet they sparked a whole generation's interest in things like dinosaurs, cats, or pirates. And go ahead, ask any 90s kid, and they are bound to have a favorite, I promise you. But how did these iconic books come to be? Well, it all started in England with a couple of guys named Christopher Dorling and Peter Kindersley. They founded a company in London back in 1974, and it eventually morphed into the publishing powerhouse we now know and love as DK. Although the road was a pretty long one for them, with their first ever book actually being a first aid manual. It wasn't until 1988 that they released the first Eyewitness book, and the idea was actually pretty simple, but also absolutely groundbreaking. They wanted to create a visually stunning, information-rich book that would make kids eager to explore the world around them. So to do this, they decided to radically change the very structure of kids' books, with the goal to, quote, slow down the pictures and speed up the text, to make space for the children to explore in their own way rather than create a linear narrative, end quote. And the gamble paid off big time. According to DK, over 50 million copies have been sold in over 36 languages, and Eyewitness quickly became a global phenomenon. And boy, did it get going. The Eyewitness books became essentially illustrated encyclopedias covering everything you could possibly imagine. Ancient Egypt, dinosaurs, Shakespeare, music, planets, you name it, they probably had a book on it. And the level of expertise behind these books was actually seriously impressive. They brought in the big guns, actual paleontologists for dinosaur books, historians for castle and knight books, and other experts in their fields. This wasn't just some dumbed down version of the facts, this was the real deal presented in a way that kids could actually understand and get excited about. And there was a lot to get excited about. I mean, with Eyewitness books, you could actually see what a Roman soldier looked like, decked out in his armor and ready for battle, which was really cool. Or you could see what exact ships Vikings sailed along with intricate diagrams and maps. The structure of them was great too, and often really logical, often separating the book by different categories or in chronological order. My favorite was seeing the real-life dinosaur size comparison, which was finally the moment it clicked with me just how huge a T-Rex actually was. Now, I think a huge reason these became so successful was the graphic design of the books, which was just something else. It was this clean, iconic white backdrop filled with images that played and paired perfectly with the text. And the other impressive thing is that even with these huge pictures, they were packed with a lot of information, but they did it in a way that made you want to read on. So even if you weren't a big reader, you could still get lost in the images and learn a ton. Now, I'm not sure if it was a hard rule, but almost every book I saw in the series had exactly 72 pages, which is a good amount of info considering the amount of work and research that probably went into one of these alone. You could practically find these books in every house, or at least every library back in the day, and the reasons were obvious. Aside from the groundbreaking format, these books were just high quality. I mean, for the pictures alone, they had a dedicated studio where they photographed real-life examples for the books. Elephants, lions, giraffes, even airplanes. It was a massive undertaking, but the commitment to quality really shines through in every page. And even if that wasn't enough for you, they even included these cool little CDs, which would have interactive games where you could explore spaces and learn more about the subjects, which were really cool. So the book's unique format, combining bite-sized chunks of text with eye-popping visuals, revolutionized the way educational books were made. And by the turn of the millennium, DK had become a household name. And the book's enormous popularity led to a somewhat unexpected adaptation. In 1995, DK teamed up with none other than BBC to create a TV version of Eyewitness, and surprisingly, it was really good. The show's success was partly thanks to the unforgettable theme song, which in my opinion is arguably one of the greatest of all time, and one that I still hum to myself every time I walk through a museum. Anyway, each half-hour episode focused on a specific topic from the books, all taking place in the iconic Eyewitness Museum. The show was remarkably impressive considering that it was done in the early days of CGI and on a TV budget. The striking white backgrounds from the books were faithfully recreated, which is even more impressive when you realize that, like the books, the show used real-life models for filming. So yeah, that tiger in the cat episode was actually filmed in the studio. It wasn't just that though. The creators poured a ton of effort into each episode. For the planets one, they meticulously crafted the planets by hand, including the craters, and to simulate the Big Bang, they even brought in a ballistics expert to create, well, a Big Bang. While the show only ran for 2 seasons, you can still find plenty of these episodes on YouTube, if for no other reason than to hear that banger of a soundtrack. So you're probably thinking, this all sounds great, a wildly popular book series, a BBC show, but actually things were a bit of a roller coaster ride, so let's jump into it. DK Publishing quickly grew from a small team in South London to a major publisher as Eyewitness books exploded in popularity. DK, wanting to capitalize on this, published them at what most people would probably think would be an absolutely insane rate. They were pumping out at least 4 or 5 new titles a year in the early 90s, and in 1995 alone, they released over 20. As you might expect, this rapid growth transformed DK, and within 25 years, it was publicly traded, raking in $200 million a year. But this high-speed gravy train was about to hit a major snag that would send them into a financial tailspin. They managed to get a deal with Star Wars, which at the time was about to release The Phantom Menace, which was probably the release of the decade. But because of this hype, they vastly overprinted their Star Wars titles, leaving them with mountains and mountains of unsold books. And the only thing that mountains of unsold books get you is crippling debt. This would lead them into the arms of Pearson, the media giant, who absorbed them into the Penguin Group in 2000. But the roller coaster did not stop there, and through mergers and acquisitions, DK Publishing would be passed around like a hot potato and eventually a wholly owned subsidiary. Now, you'd think with all these shakeups and drama, that would be the end, right? But you may be happy to know that despite all of this, the Eyewitness series is alive and well today. DK's website currently lists over 120 of these books for sale, and they are seemingly continuing to release new titles, although at a much slower rate than in their prime, which is probably for the better because 10 plus a year was a bit too much. But they haven't just been churning out new books. DK has also been revisiting some of the classic older titles, updating them with fresh looks and updated facts. And even still, if that's not enough for you, there are countless other publishers that have jumped on the bandwagon throughout the years to create their own Eyewitness type books. These might not bear the official Eyewitness name, but they share a similar approach, emphasizing vibrant visuals and engaging facts. And while some of them are great, you and I both know that Eyewitness will always be the GOAT. But it is a testament to the legacy of these Eyewitness books that it was probably partially responsible for an entire subgeneration of books. So let's finally answer the question once and for all, whatever happened to Eyewitness? Well, after coming from seemingly nowhere to positively exploding in the 90s, DK faced a number of highs and lows, and while DK Publishing itself might not have survived the storm, well, the Eyewitness books certainly did. Although you're unlikely to stumble across them as much as you might have a few decades ago, they undeniably pushed forward a whole new wave of visually driven learning experiences, and the format has proven its staying power, reminding us that even in the digital age, there's still something special about turning the pages of a beautifully illustrated book. And as far as legacies go, that's a pretty good one to have. But what do you think? Do you guys still see these around? Do kids still read them? Do you still read them? Aside from that, thanks again for watching, and a huge shout out to my patrons who make this possible. As always, if you ever have any suggestions about what you want me to cover next, feel free to drop a comment. It's always really cool to hear what you have to say. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.